I'll be happy to share with you what I believe, but I am not going to tell you you're wrong because you don't believe like I do. I think doors will be opened. Doors are rarely kicked in to disciple someone.
Folks, welcome to the Disciple Dilemma. We've got a fascinating conversation today called Jesus and Manufacturing. If you don't understand how that works biblically, hang on. We're going to unpack that for you as Dr. Raymond Monroe and Dr. Tony Schmitz join us. Let me tell you about Tony's rap sheet. This is a fascinating guy from one end to the other. He's a follower of Jesus Christ. He's a summa cum laude, Bachelor of Science, Mechanical Engineering, Temple University. He was also a defensive back on the football team there. So this guy's got the brains and the brawn, where I'm just beautiful and Raymond's just got the brains. And we look at his graduate work, mechanical engineering, master of science, PhD mechanical engineering. Those were Gator days for him, University of Florida, postdoctoral appointment with the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So this is no slouch. We're dealing with somebody who's got a lot of credibility. Lecturer at Johns Hopkins University. He's been on faculty at University of Florida, University of North Carolina, Charlotte. He is now on faculty, University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And I believe, Tony, you are also under a joint appointment with faculty at Oak Ridge National Laboratory, right?
Yes, sir. It's truly a unique opportunity.
Well, we'll unpack some of that. This is a highly decorated dude. He's got 3 textbooks under his resume. He's co-authored over 130 journal publications. But the really important thing is somehow he convinced Christine to marry him, which I guess, again, shows grace and miracles do happen. They've got 2 college-age kids, Jake and Barbara, in their 20s now. And I think this family serving Christ has got a fascinating story for us. So I'm going to start out just by saying, Raymond, I'm so grateful, Dr. Raymond Monroe, that you are here to bring credibility to this conversation and help Tony not be completely panicked about hanging out with me. Thanks, Raymond, for picking up the role on this.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I'm just delighted that Tony could join us. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for organizing this, Dennis.
And Tony, thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, Tony, you and I have had just a couple of conversations, and you and I have talked about commonality we have with other Christians within our technology workplace. How did you, as a Christian, end up in machining technology?
Yeah, so Ray, I'd like to say I had a big plan and everything went according to plan, but as most of us in our life experience, that is not the case. How did I end up in machining? When I finished my undergraduate career, I was still enamored with football, and I wasn't quite ready to be done with it. And so I coached football for a couple of seasons. And then as I was looking down my life pathway and preparing to marry my future wife, Christine, who Dennis mentioned, we talked about having a family and having a family as a college football coach. And my wife, future wife, felt like those two weren't very well aligned. And so I agreed. And that was the point where I went back to graduate school. And really, I had no idea what I was doing, but God had a plan. So God put me in machine tools, and it's been a terrific career. And He's just opened door after door over the last 20 years.
How did you come to faith? And how did you move through your academic and technology career? What's been your faith journey so far?
Yeah, I think each of us are given different gifts in terms of how what's easy for us and what's hard for us on that faith journey. For me, the faith part is really easy. Being able to just believe whatever the Bible says has never been a struggle for me. That's not true for everyone, particularly those, in science environments. And I think then being a professor without having to wrestle with, okay, intellectually, how do I receive the Bible? Not an issue for me. And for me, not for everyone.
Dennis's book is saying that we're losing sight of the mission, which is to make disciples, and that evangelism is really just the entrance It's not the end goal of what it means to be church. What we really want to do are people that are in love serving other people. And what that means, as far as I understand it, is that as a disciple, everything I do is ministry. How have you experienced that in terms of your research, development, academic career?
I agree with everything that you just said, Ray. I am thrilled when God reveals something new to me. It's not as if I'm learning things that God doesn't know, but in my very limited knowledge, my little tiny brain relative to God's full knowledge, occasionally He gives me insights, and I'm like, that is so cool. And so throughout my career, there have been moments of insight, and I have such joy in those. And then being able to share that is terrific. And that's the thing that I would add to what you said. Being able to cultivate relationships, and those always end up being where you can share who you are and what you believe at some point when the time is right. That's the other layer that's been added on by a terrific career.
Tony, tell me something about the world that you live in. I'm just thinking about your post-grad work, Florida, and now your professorship at Tennessee and Oak Ridge National Labs. My exposure to people in those venues is a highly skeptical world of people who would say a lot of the stuff you believe in your core, in your worldview, is both irrational and ridiculous. Do you have interactions like that? Do you have people who really want to dig in and understand why you're such a whack job in the way you think about things? Or is life really great and they're scared of how big you are and they don't want to mess around with you and they leave you alone?
Well, you can't know what people are thinking, but my general experience is I don't usually have people pick fights with me about my Christian beliefs, because I don't typically pick fights with people about their non-Christian beliefs. I figure we all had free will, and I'll be happy to share with you what I believe, but I am not going to tell you you're wrong because you don't believe like I do. I think doors will be opened. Doors are rarely kicked in to disciple someone. And so I think the mutual respect that I will have for other people tends to have people kind of give me a freebie, given that they think maybe what I believe is silly, but they're not going to attack me because certainly I'm not going to attack them.
Ray, tell me something just for a minute from the outside. You're looking at Tony from the outside. You've got a relationship with him in a number of various venues and fora. What makes Tony weird in the world that you guys live in terms of his worldview?
Oh, that's interesting. Absolutely nothing. He would be seen as just a tremendous leader and one of the brightest, most capable people in his field. He would be, if not the number one guy, in the top 5 of people in that whole machining world. He's just really a phenomenal intellect, experience.
Folks, we're talking with Professor Tony Schmitz, University of Tennessee. He is part of a fantastic agenda of mechanical, aerospace, and biomedical engineering at UT. He's also a joint faculty member out at Oak Ridge National Laboratory. So this guy is really a rocket scientist in the world of manufacturing, and he is going alongside Dr. Raymond Monroe, who's also a manufacturing engineering guy. And the subject these two have foisted on us is Jesus and manufacturing. Stick with us. When we get back, we're going to get all the answers to that title question's implications. Thanks for listening. I've got 2 manufacturing geniuses here on the podcast with me. You guys are the uber goobers of manufacturing. We need to go out and mass produce disciples. We need to be cranking these guys out at a rapid, huge rate. We need efficient methodology to make disciples. Don't we, Tony? Don't we, Ray?
I'll be happy to intercept that for Tony. No, we're going to have a unit of 1 production. That's the way God did it. A unit of 1 production.
You guys wanted to call this Jesus and manufacturing. I'm trying to get down to the efficient production of disciples. Where are we going with this conversation? What a ripoff.
Well, we want to talk about manufacturing because Jesus spent most of his career manufacturing. From the time he was 8 years old until he was 28 years old, he was manufacturing.
Who mentored you spiritually in your graduate school days?
My freshman year at college, one of my coaches, um, we tell it from two different sides. He says the Holy Spirit told him, "You need to get to know this kid." And he said, "I don't want to." I don't see any reason that I'd want to get to know him. And from my perspective, this gentleman was not my position coach, and we didn't have many interactions, and I wasn't particularly drawn to him either. But he just felt like he was supposed to get to know me, and so he started a relationship. And so fall semester freshman year, we get into the spring. That's when we start getting to know one another. Summertime's coming around, and he says, "What are you going to do this summer?" And I said, I don't know. I don't want to go back home. I don't want to live at home. So I'll probably just get a job somewhere and go live. And one of the other players' dad had a construction company. And I said, I guess I'll go do construction for the summer. And I kind of joked. I said, I'll probably lose a toe or a finger or something. And he said, "Dad, why don't you come stay with me?" He owned a chain of convenience stores. And he said, you can work there and do that this summer. And so I said yes, having barely known one another. He's a lifelong friend and a mentor, and he, strong Christian man.
Are you in that same kind of situation, or is it even more restrictive in your world?
I don't think it's particularly restrictive. There might be some that would feel like they could get in trouble, by sharing their faith or whatever. I've just always sort of ignored that and just figured God's going to take care of me. If he has somebody for me to talk to, I'm just going to talk to him. Okay. In terms of those relationships with my peers at the university, the best description I've ever heard about it is it's a flat landscape. At a university, everybody's on the same plane. And I'm careful to treat all my colleagues as equals and peers. And just because I've been doing this longer, not try to hit them over the head with that hammer. So I think that tends to open more doors than trying to have a hierarchical relationship with colleagues. I try to avoid that.
Tony, the principal effort in the disciple dilemma, Dennis identifies about 7 distortions that have been around for millennia in the church. The clergy being different than ordinary people. Christianity is a transaction where once I get my get out of hell free card because I gave my heart to Jesus, I don't really need to do anything else. And so he's calling that correctly the discipleship dilemma, that we've gotten really good at focusing on evangelism and making the mission of the church evangelism without really focusing on the need to develop disciples who are loving their neighbor and serving their family and caring for their fellow employees or their fellow coworkers. What do you think, as someone who's been involved in both of those worlds, the church is doing well, or the church needs to change and become better at, if we're really going to attack the notion of getting, especially the next generation, your students, to really become disciples who spend everything they do, all of their life, serving Christ?
I can say that from a youth, the church was foundational for me to come to an understanding of who God is and what he means in my life. As a young man, my parents took me to the Lutheran church, and so I went through catechism. And I can tell you those 2 years of studying the Bible and what, right or wrong, the fundamental beliefs of the Lutheran church brought me to a level of it just becoming part of the fabric of the way that I interpreted the world. And so what does the church need to do well? One of the things, aside from conversion, is instruction of our youth. Now, part of that's, the family's responsibility, of course. I'm not removing that responsibility from parents, but I think the church should be a safe place for young people to learn who God is and then mature in that learning. As a 6-year-old, I had a different understanding of who God was than as a 16-year-old than as a 46-year-old. And so that grows. But that's where I would begin, is to say we need to have a safe place to grow and mature in your faith. In terms of the tension between conversion and growth and discipleship, it's hard to disciple because people are complicated and they make mistakes and they're messy. And when you put groups together, there's going to be conflict. And so I think the easy choice is to just focus on, oh my gosh, let's just get them the get out of hell free card. I understand that because that's pretty clean, right? It's pretty easy instruction. It's not so hard to teach somebody that you've done wrong, because I think we all kind of know it, right? But golly, if you're going to try to mature someone, that's hard. It's like raising children. And man, you're going to have good days and bad days. And so, I don't know. I think that's where it is. Like, the church needs to commit to the messiness of people's lives and the fact that it's not linear, just like we talked about solving problems and gaining insights. So I think we need to embrace the fact that that's what it looks like, and it's a community, and it's not linear, and we're not about numbers, and we're more about sharing our lives together. And if we can do that honestly, I think the church will be a different place for a lot of people.
How do you think have you been able to get through that, either with your students or in a church? And how do we move people to realize that they really need to shift from what is in it for me to what can I contribute in the service of Christ? How do we do that?
Well, first of all, I think you make such a tremendous point. It's so true. If I'm going to church to be a consumer, then I'm going to be failed. I'm going to feel like I didn't get what I wanted, because we are fickle consumers, and we buy things and we throw them out and we buy something new. So that is, I guarantee that is a failed model. In my academic career, I mentor a lot of students.
Sure.
And I have a research laboratory. I'm an experimentalist. And so I have big equipment and a lot of students around that equipment. And, I actually think in that environment, I've been better at creating a sense of belonging.
Sure.
And the fact that you have a role in this and you must do your role or the whole thing doesn't work as well, than I actually have in any church leadership position I've ever had, because I think you go into that I have to serve the people around me, and I really can't insist on anything, and so on. And I've treated the two so differently. I don't know that it's occurred to me, Ray, until this very moment, that the way I treat my students and the way I run my research program is absolutely different than I would have envisioned a role in the church. And I don't know why. I honestly don't.
What got into you to do your blog?
I like writing. In fact, as a young man, I wanted to be a writer. That was my career ambition as a high school student. And I revealed this to my dad, and he said, yeah, sure, you can write, but go to college and be an engineer so you can have a real job. So I said, okay, fine, Dad. So I did engineering. But I really enjoy writing. And I think it was only once I kind of got into my 40s that I felt like maybe I have some wisdom to share.
And I really would like every single person that listens to this or that is in any church to have the encouragement, even from the pastor, that whatever job they do, they need to do it to the best of their ability and find real joy in it, because that's where God put them and what God made them to do. And that's ministry, that they're not wasting their time until they get to heaven. And it's not that they don't have a ministry because they're not playing music in the church or a brain surgeon.
Tony, if folks want to get a sample of the stuff you're writing from a Christian worldview, where do they go?
My blog is a WordPress blog, and the Holy Schmitz is probably the best way to track it down. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. A lot of what I put there is the professional development stuff. But whenever I do a new blog post, it automatically is posted on my LinkedIn account. And so I think you could probably find it there as well.
Okay, folks, so you're seeing on the screen right now, Tony's blog post and his LinkedIn address. So first of all, I want to just thank Dr. Tony Schmitz, who's a podcaster, a professor, and a pursuer of Christ, for being with us today. Thank you, Tony, for being with us. Thanks
for the opportunity. It was great talking to both of you.
And Raymond, as always, thanks for making better out of this than I ever could.
No. This was genuinely fun. I think this is really a critical issue that we need to deal with. So thanks for supporting this, Dennis. Thank you.
You've been listening to the conversation about Jesus and manufacturing with Professor Tony Schmitz, who's a professor at the University of Tennessee, also on joint faculty with Oak Ridge National Laboratories. Tony's world is in mechanical and aerospace and biomedical engineering. And if you want to communicate with him, you've seen some of the places that we've just flashed up that you can pick up on his blog, as well as his LinkedIn site, and communicate with him there. And what we're putting up on the screen right now is some of the touchstones that you can reach out to on the Disciple Dilemma for YouTube, for Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, as well as our regular website traffic at thediscipledilemma.com. We're trying to get the word out, folks. The discipleship has been hacked. We're all immersed in traditions that go back 18 centuries, and they are not biblical, and they are not good in discipleship. So as Raymond and I are having these conversations with people like Tony, we're trying to get this concept across that just living in the present day world with the present day paradigms is not the best way to manufacture disciples. In fact, the biblical way, version 1.0, Jesus' first way, is it. So please support us, follow us at these social media sites. It helps us get the word out in a very crowded digital marketplace that discipleship has been hacked. And as always, folks, thanks for listening.